Hello, people of YouTube and any other platform that you are on right now. This is episode 2 of... Honestly, if this becomes like a recurring thing with like other subjects and stuff, I just want to call this the ArticulateCast because it's, AC, it's my branding, etc. But this is episode 2 of Fixing Music Education with Anna Articulate Composed and Jojo Funk McLovin.
Hello.
So this episode is last episode we focused on higher education, on the flaws with music school, music conservatory, things that we both paid exorbitant amounts of money for and didn't get absolutely everything out of that we wished we could have. This episode is going to be about music education when you're a little bit younger. So, to start this out, Jojo, what was your music experience from the first time you touched an instrument up until college?
So, once upon a time, there was I think this was 5th grade, they came around with instruments to my middle school and were like, what do you want to play? Or no, it was elementary school. They said, what do you want to play for middle school band? And I got the old, because I'm tall and a boy, so, well, I was a boy. I don't know what I got going on now. Don't worry about it. I got pegged as a trombonist, and I thought the trombone was very funny and cool, so I was like, this is fine. So I played trombone to begin with, and that was literally my first ever experience with an instrument, other than playing recorder for, like, band that I didn't give a shit about, or a recorder for elementary school music. I think everyone does that, right? Everyone plays recorder.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Did you know that is the fault of Carl Orff, the guy who wrote Carmina Burana?
What's Carl Orff got to do with my recorder education?
Back in, like, the early 20th century, Carl Orff was like, we have to save classical music. Let's make every elementary schooler play the recorder.
Thanks, Carl. Jackass. No, I'm just kidding. I actually like playing the recorder. But, so I played trombone, and the school that I originally went to was dog shit, just the worst. Like, it was basically hick country, but in the worst possible way. Like, no homespun wisdom, no, like, cool farming skills, just, like, homophobic trailer trash, basically. And I changed schools because my parents were cool with that. They didn't care about, like, they could see I was miserable, and they were good parents, so they were like, hey, let's get Johnny Boy out of this horrible school and into one that doesn't suck so bad. And I went to the next town over, which was all the hick stuff that you would associate with my original school, but there was, like, a rich district nearby. So we got a lot of stuff, like we got iPads in my senior year. We had a really good band program, all that kind of stuff. So there I met this guy. Shout out to, I don't know if you want to, like, name names here. I'll just call him Tommy Boy. He was my band director, and he was awesome. He, like, gave me books for free. He was just like, this is what I studied in college. I don't need this shit anymore. Here you go. Take my old college books. Because we didn't really have theory classes, and I was curious about it. And then I found an app for my phone for music theory, and I would study that instead of geometry in the back of class.
As you should.
Because my whole identity back then was like, I'm the music guy. I'm going to be a composer. I'm going to compose for video games. And, I've become more jaded since then, but I think it's very charming that my whole identity was like, I'm the music guy, and everyone would ask me questions about theory and whatnot.
I mean, you do sometimes compose for video games.
That's true. I have an IMDb.
If you met your past self, you could be like, hey, look at this game, this visual novel that you wrote all this music for. And your past self wouldn't have to know that it doesn't pay the bills.
Yeah, past self would be like, oh my god, and you're like a professional. How much do you make? And I'd start coughing and say, oh, the time machine's wearing off. I gotta go. See you later.
I think about this all the time, because, like, in theory, my 15-year-old self, I don't know about anything before 15, but my 15-year-old self, which is where, like, most of my personality solidified, would probably be so fucking stoked where I am today. She'd be
Nice.
like, oh my God,
live in New York?
you've written musicals and had them performed, and you live in New York City, and you make money writing for video game soundtracks. Like, her mind. Also, that's when I read Homestuck, so
Oh, God.
past me would be like, oh my God, you made money off of a Homestuck?
Hey.
You're the only Vriska voice actor with an IMDb page about it?
That's awesome.
But, then I'd be like, oh, by the way, I'm, like, really struggling for money. And she'd be like, oh, maybe I will go into insert science field here instead.
Little Jojo going
yeah,
into...
that's the girl
being a
boss
lawyer.
timeline.
The girl... Let's see. Yeah, I think, and then I got into college, and that was all, like, I switched to piano in college. I never played piano before college, actually.
Really?
I switched to my junior year.
Huh.
I think, like, piano is just... Everyone thinks, like, oh, piano, it's just a totally different beast if you've played a wind instrument. Like, a wind instrument, very easy to sight read, very easy to, like, sort of become proficient at.
Oh, piano is so much more difficult than... I was talking to my therapist about this for some reason. She was arguing that piano must be easier to learn, because she played clarinet when she was in school, and she was arguing piano must be easier than clarinet. It's like, what? No. I mean, I didn't play clarinet, I played sax, but piano's harder than wind instruments.
Yeah, I would say piano has, like, a lower skill floor, because all you have to do is push a button to make a note, as opposed to trombone, where you have to sort of develop your skill for making notes at all. And then piano has the high skill ceiling where, okay, I've learned how to play my scales. Now the next step is, like, hand, what's the word for when you do two different things with your hands? I don't remember. But that. And it's like incredibly hard to sight read.
Oh yeah.
Like, you can just kind of sit down and play a song for trombone with accompaniment the first time, but piano is like, no, I gotta sit here and, like,
accompanists that have
around.
to sight read like dozens of songs for auditions. Anyone who can accompany, being an audition accompanist, is like a god to me.
I got kicked out of doing accompanying in college because I sucked so bad at it. I just sucked ass. I thought I was, like, a bad pianist for not being able to sight read, and then one of my piano teachers was like, I don't do that shit either. So, I mean, I'm probably a bad pianist for not being able to sight read, but I don't care. I mean,
you're probably a better pianist than I am. I am dreadful at piano. I mean, that's partially because I haven't practiced in ages, but I'm fucking dreadful at it. I just get too stressed to perform on it. But back to the topic at hand. So you mostly had music through public education. You didn't have private lessons or anything like that?
No, I didn't have anything. I did, like I said, the band director who was very supportive of me was, like, he would, like, teach me shit, and he was very involved with teaching his students. Like, we had a 2-hour band class and then plus jazz band in the morning. So it was, like, very involved.
2-hour band in high school, damn.
Yeah, we were, like I said, we had a huge football program, and that meant that, like, all the football moms were like, we need a nice band to play for our boys and all that shit. So.
Oh, you had marching band.
Yes.
My high school didn't do marching band. It was all concert band. I feel like I would have hated marching band.
I loved marching band. If you're not, it doesn't require that much athletics, but you better believe it's, like, very, like, strenuous.
I have zero stamina. Honestly, jazz band was a fucking workout in high school. I don't have very much stamina when it comes to physical things.
Yeah, or for jazz band too, we would do, like, local shows.
Oh, cool.
Outside of just, like, we did one at a nearby zoo. We did ones for, like, we got plastic mouthpieces and played outside for caroling. We just did a lot, and I think that I realized after I got out of school, like, oh, this is not, like, the normal small-town band experience. Like I said, I kind of lucked out because I had a very supportive teacher. It's one of those stories, like...
And that's something we are going to touch on a little later when it comes to the, like, thoroughness of school band programs.
Yes.
Because, so, my band program was pretty good, but I also had a lot of private lessons. When I was 6, my parents were like, oh, our kid's not struggling enough in school. We have to make her struggle with something or else she's gonna not try ever and, like, fail when things start getting hard later on. So they put me in piano lessons when I was 6. Yeah, technically I have been playing piano for 20 years, yet I suck so bad. But then again, like, half of those years have been not playing at all. But, yeah, I took piano lessons when I was 6 up until I was like 13. I had the same experience of when I was in 4th grade, the band teacher pulled everyone aside, had you write down 3 instruments you might be interested in playing, and one of the instruments on my list was saxophone, and the band director was like, "Oh, your lower lip is enormous. That's really good for saxophone playing."
Weird flex.
That's how I was chosen for sax.
You got the old big lower lip. I think it's funny how much profiling does go into, like, your first instrument selection. It's so funny.
Oh, there's so much profiling. I saw it on Tumblr or Twitter or something that was like a list of the, like, standard. Actually, I think I might have seen it on TikTok. I don't know if I'll be able to find it again, but it was, yeah, a list of, like, standard band profiling things. And apparently, I forget what it was, but there was one thing that was like, if a student is like this, don't put them on any winds, except saxophone. They'll be able to handle saxophone.
That's so fucking funny.
Because sax is the easiest wind to learn. It has the embouchure. It has the easier embouchure of the single reed instrument, because double reeds are really, really hard, and flute's pretty hard. But it has the easier key distribution of flute. It's like if you take the easiest part of the flute and the easiest part of the clarinet and you jam them together.
And then you jam when they're jammed together.
And then you jam. I mean, that's why sax is so good at, like, really complicated bebop licks, because it's, like, easy to learn to the point where you can just be fucking insane on it.
I love bebop.
But, yeah, and when I was in middle school, I started taking private sax lessons because, and we'll talk about this later, my middle school band director was fucking insane when it came to pushing students to perform really complicated solos.
I've never gotten the obsession with... I only realized this after I got out of high school, but there's this weird obsession with, like, complexity as skill, which kind of, like... Because I've known plenty of second trumpets who like, they can fuck around on, like, a scale and make it sound complicated, but then, you know, when it comes to actually sight reading or something, it's like, okay, you can't do shit. But I just don't get the... Do you feel that way, that complexity is prioritized over...
Oh, fully. And this was something that I came to recognize as I got older. I was never super great at the very technical aspect of things. I've never been super good with the way I've practiced my whole life. I've never really, like, been good at drilling a single line for, like, hours and hours. I don't have that attention span. I straight up don't have the attention span, and I get frustrated and I want to finish the whole piece because I want to feel the whole piece. I want to get to the parts that make me happy. What I am good at is emotional lines. I was always, like... I was the person who would get the solos that required, like, deep bending and, like, wailing sounds. I was always good at pushing the emotional side of things. I couldn't do the real fast licks, but there were people who could do the real fast licks who sounded kind of mechanical doing it. They didn't have the passion behind it.
Yeah, I feel that way. I don't know. It seems like a strange... Because how I view it is, like... If you sit there for 20 minutes and practice with a metronome, you're going to get any lick. Like, any lick. No matter how hard it is, no matter what. Like, you can do that with enough, like, just raw practice. So it almost kind of seems inevitable to me, that kind of process. But what's not inevitable and what shows real skill is, like you said, this expressive quality where you can sort of, you know, tease different sounds out of your instrument, or you can have better tone, or you can do something like that. When I was in college, one of the reasons I dropped trombone was my teacher was not interested in the technical aspect. He was interested in sort of, like you say, the mechanical, you know, how impressive a solo can you play for your what did they call those things? Where you play in front of a panel?
Juries.
Juries, yes.
If I didn't have those private lessons that I had from when I was like 12 or 13 up until when I graduated high school, I would not have gotten the same kind of technical prowess on my instrument because, so like there were weekly lessons in band. It was part of the thing, but they weren't the same kind of depth. If you were in one of the lower level lessons, if you were smaller's not the right word. If you were a lower chair, your lessons would be going over the band music. If you were a higher chair, the lessons would be you'd get to be part of a sax quartet, which was fun, but it wasn't the same kind of like digging into like developing your tone, developing your depth of. I had a really good private sax teacher. He was he used to be like a pretty established jazz musician, and you know, he had his 13-year-old students playing really complex Charlie Parker solos, and you know, I learned a lot about sax technique from him, and I would not have gotten that from band lessons because I can't remember. I think my band director was a clarinetist. My middle school band director was a trombonist. My high school band director, I think, was a clarinetist. She was some wind player, but neither the middle school or high school band director were saxophonists specifically. And, you know, music ed college, you have to get basic proficiency in all the instruments, but you don't get the same depth as if it was your primary. Kids who don't have parents who can afford private lessons are at a absolute disadvantage. And I mean, this is why I was surprised that you didn't have any private lessons, because usually people who don't have private lessons can't get into music school.
I mean, I didn't get into music school. I got into a state college. You wrote down in the notes acknowledging how people who don't pay for private lessons, they might not excel as much. Most of the people I know were from the same background that I had, which was, you know, no private lessons, no nothing. You just learn your instrument and fucked around, basically. And a lot of the people I knew in my when I had a wedding band, they weren't even in band at all. They like knew how to play guitar or something. And I think that what people forget is like there's other paths on their way to being a musician or being a music person we discussed this in the last episode, but that are totally ignored by establishment types, right?
Yeah.
But there was an elitism to it. And I'm not saying, you know, everyone who got private lessons is an elitist. That's certainly not it. But there's an elitism that comes along with like, well, I got private lessons, so I'm taking this seriously. You know what I mean? Whereas me, who came from community college going into state college and interacting with people who maybe had a composition degree already, or they had a composition degree from a better school or something like that, they were like, well, you know, you're not taking this seriously. I've had that told to me explicitly, like, you're not taking this seriously enough. And it's like, you're talking out your ass here, because I'm taking it just as seriously as you. I just don't have the money to throw at this shit. My parents didn't have the money to send me to these stupid lessons. And quite frankly, I don't think I'd be having a good time doing that if I went down that path, because I kind of like the, you know, slumming it with people who just do gigs for a living. And it just kind of ticks me off that there's a lot of like weird elitism surrounding basically how much money you can spend on your music education.
Oh yeah, totally. And this is something that I've come to realize when it comes to like the different ways people can approach music. How many instruments can you comfortably play? Like if someone was to ask you on the spot to play something, doesn't have to be a complex thing, but just like something that sounds like a complete piece, how many instruments could you do that on?
Let's see. I'll go by how many instruments I could play Happy Birthday on.
No, let's aim a little higher, just because if you've ever picked up a wind instrument and know sort of how things work, you could figure out Happy Birthday on like any instrument.
True.
Yeah.
Let's
so,
say one that I've played in a with others in a
or
setting.
yeah, how many instruments could you perform on?
I don't know how much you count this for, but trumpet, euphonium, trombone, tuba, I think those are all from the same kind of shtick. So we'll count that as like one.
No, I'm going to count them as separate because I can only play sax.
Okay. So
when it comes to, I do not have prowess on any instrument.
I guess they're different. Yeah, the
sax.
embouchure is like way different. Like comparing tuba to trumpet, yeah, that's pretty different. So that's 4, maybe 3 because euphonium and trombone are kind of the same. There's bass guitar, there's guitar, piano, obviously. So what's that? That's 6? I can't count.
You're on 7, I think.
Oh, 7. Ukulele, that was a huge one. My dad makes ukuleles, so that's like an important one. I'm looking around my room at my instruments. I'm forgetting some. I've played flute. I've only played it for one song for jazz band in college, but I'm gonna count it. Drums, snare drum. I played snare drum in high school because I thought you needed to play drums to be the drum major.
You don't?
No, it's just
What does
I
the
don't
drum major
understand
do?
that name. They're just the conductor. They're just the
Oh.
student conductor. But
I was never in marching band. I had no idea.
That's funny.
I thought drum major was like first chair drum.
No, they're just the conductor. I don't know why they call it that. They should have just called it the student conductor or something. But drums, xylophone. I played for one song in high school band. That's all I can think of right now. But that's like, I don't know, it's like 10.
You were at 11.
Oh, okay.
Now, okay, so you learned mostly from I'm gonna fuck around and find out kind of way.
Yeah, just jack of all trades.
Do you want to count voice? Because I'm gonna count voice in my count. Okay, so you have 12. For me, saxophone, piano. I said I'm bad at it, but seriously, if you put some music in front of me and give me like a few weeks to learn it, I can learn it. Voice, which is the only thing I'm really self-taught on, but I'm gonna count that. I have done some fucking hard work in front of this mic to make myself sound better than I did when I was a kid.
Hell yeah, confidence.
I'm gonna count guitar because I've gotten to the point where I can play 3 songs on it. 3 whole songs. So counting that as something that I can play on. And if you're counting things that you had to learn for one song in college, I guess I should count clarinet because I learned a few notes for one song in college jazz band.
Yeah.
That one feels weird to count because if you told me to pick up a clarinet and play now, I wouldn't fucking know what I was doing.
You can do a half. That's a half one.
So, yeah. That's less than half as many as you said.
Wow.
I learned from a lessons standpoint. I learned from a learn this piece, learn it right, learn it top to bottom, play it, and then you're not really going to touch it again perspective. I think you came from a better perspective than I did. And that's going to lead us into one of the points I want to talk about. Is self-teaching better than structured lessons? Does it make you a better musician?
This is a good question, and I'm glad you asked it like this, because we often think of self-teaching versus structure as like, these are your 2 choices, right? You either self-teach or you have lessons. I really don't think either one is very good on its own, because self-teaching, there's no focus. Like, you're just kind of, like, everyone listening probably wants to think of themselves as like, they're very smart, they're very capable, and they could learn anything they wanted. But if you're self-teaching, and this has happened to me too, if you're self-teaching something, the capability for you to just give up is so fucking easy.
Oh yeah.
That it's like, you cannot do that. It's self-taught is like, you already have to have some background. You can't self-teach yourself from zero. Self-teaching is for like, when you already have a music degree and you're trying to learn to mix a recording or something.
No, that's another thing I'm mostly self-taught on is audio mixing.
Exactly.
But honestly, we should think of that as an instrument. Nobody thinks about music production as an instrument, but honestly, it's a fucking instrument.
I think so. And then structured lessons, you think of like, you either are learning it from the ground up, from zero, or you are learning from someone who is of a better skill than you. who is teaching you more skills. But I think both of these approaches are kind of dog shit. The only lesson teacher that I ever had that I liked was my piano teacher in college when I was a junior and I switched instruments. And she used to be my accompanist when I played trombone. And she told me, you cannot, you don't learn anything. You should not approach something as just learning it, right? If you're learning a language, for instance, Duolingo has such a low success rate because of this. When you're just going to quote-unquote learn something out of nowhere for no reason, you have zero motivation to do it. It's giving up is completely, risk-free and easy. There's no investment whatsoever, even if you've paid a lot of money to get to college to do it. What she said was, you have to have a goal in mind, and the goal has to be something incredibly specific. For me, it was, okay, I have to have the song Work Song presentable as a jury piece. It can be something like that. Or it can be something like, I want to, get this score at this ensemble. And a lot of lessons do that, but a lot of lessons also just fart around and basically just are a waste of time. They're like, how many lessons have you had where they're just like, all right, let's do some fundamentals. It's like, okay, that's fine, but what am I doing them for? So if you look at something like, I want to have something prepared, I want to have a piece done, not I want to get better at this instrument, it's kind of unintuitive, but you will learn a lot more if you are not trying to force yourself to be better, right?
Oh, that makes total sense. Though honestly, I don't know how many music lessons I did where there wasn't a goal in mind. Because usually, take the sax lessons I took in high school. The goal was usually either preparing a piece for fall or spring chair auditions, which took up a lot of my stress, or preparing a piece for the... Did you have a solo festival in Michigan?
Yeah, it was solo and ensemble.
Okay, so you had a Michigan equivalent of NISMA.
Yeah, I don't know what the hell they called it, but, you just go there and, these dumb kids would get up there and, get graded, basically.
Yeah. Yeah, I did that every year. My middle school band director was obsessed with it. And, my lessons often had to do with basically just, preparing these big pieces for these big events. Mm-hmm. And when I was a little kid, when I was taking piano lessons, the goal was the recital at the end of the semester. So there was always a goal. Sometimes when you're young, it's not the goal you want.
Yeah.
If you're 13 years old, you don't really know what you want. I wanted to get a good score on these things, but I wanted to get a good score because I wanted to look good compared to everyone else. I wanted... Yeah. Now's the time for the spicy salt.
Oh, no. Or oh, yes.
Okay. So, middle school band director, obsessed with these NISMA competitions, wanted to make sure everybody in band did them, wanted to pressure everybody to do really well at them. He would publicly list everyone's score on the bulletin board after the fact.
Nice. And by nice, I mean horrible.
It's a total violation of FERPA.
Oh, cool. Yeah. What the fuck is FERPA?
Family Education Rights Protection Act, I think?
Yeah.
Every year, I would basically cry myself to sleep because I did not want my score to be published. And the worst score I ever got was a 94, by the way.
Jesus.
Yeah, I didn't want that 94 to be seen next to someone else's 99. One of my closest friends in band when I was in middle school always got 100s on her solos, and I didn't want my measly 94 to be seen next to her perfect 100. It was just dreadfully embarrassing, and I feel like I wasn't playing for the right reasons. I wasn't wanting to improve because I wanted to be really good at sax. I wanted to improve so I could have that good, shiny I never got 100. The highest score I ever got was a 99, and it was a pity 99 because I had pertussis that year, and I had a coughing fit in the middle of the fourth movement, and I'm pretty sure that's why I got a 99 that year. But, yeah, I wanted that 100 so everybody else could see that, yes, I was one of the good people, too.
That's the kind of shit that, like, your dad would say, they don't discipline kids anymore. They don't teach them real. But, like, it's also the kind of thing that, like, saved countless students from just being neurotic wrecks later in life.
God, yeah.
I think that's horrible. That's, like, you shouldn't... I mean, you should grade kids, and you should have, like, a sense of where they are in the pack. But it should be not to, like, discourage them from wanting to do more. It should be like, all right, what are you good at, right? Or if it's a score, it should be like a team score or something. I don't know. It just seems neurotic to, like, grade a teenager on, like, you fucked up once, so you get a 99. Now you have to live in shame because you'll never get 100.
It was always the sight reading I fucked up on, too. Because I've always sucked at sight reading. Sight reading's really stressful.
Yeah. I just think that it's... We talked about this last time, or maybe we did, but it's like this competition aspect to music that does just not need to be there. Just totally...
Yes.
Like, if you're running a race, or if you are intentionally participating in, like, team sports, that's one thing. To be like, all right, we're going to rate you against your peers, because that's good in this context. Like, I want to be faster, so you should record my time. That makes sense. But this ephemeral, like, oh, you did a 99% good job on your Pete. What the fuck does that mean?
I know.
It's idiotic.
I mean, these grades were so people could get into all-state bands. Like, they only let people with the highest scores into all-state. I only got into the all-state band once, and that was the year I got the 99. So that's the point of the grades, but, like, come on. And, like, my high school band director was very much, like, she did not want this to be a competition. She wanted people to just enjoy themselves and, like, really emphasized, like, your seat in the band does not matter. It does not matter what chair you get. It doesn't matter who is first chair. And it took a while for that to sink in because, like, in the real world, if you're auditioning for an orchestra, it doesn't matter if you are second well, there are no saxophones in the orchestra, but, like, say it doesn't matter if you're a second violin, because you got in. You got in that seat. You are being paid. It doesn't matter what chair you are because you have a job.
Yeah, or critically, if you don't get that chair, like, you don't just throw your hands up and say, I guess I'm homeless now. I don't get to eat because I didn't get my job that I wanted. It's like, no, you just do something else with your skill set. It's not like, I don't know. It's what pisses me off is how chairs are recorded in general. The chair system always struck me as very strange. Because in jazz band, if you've ever been in one, I don't know if it's like this in any concert or symphonic bands, but the chair position is like kind of a role more than
it's just what part you play.
Because it's a smaller ensemble. For instance, I was always second on trumpet in college, or in high school rather, because I like playing solos, and second chair gets the solos. First chair gets all the, high notes and very technical stuff, and then third and fourth chair are kind of the, harmony element. Which is like, okay, that's your job. We don't need to assign, like, a number on it that's going to make someone feel horrible. If you have a number system or a grading system, it should be something that will inspire you to do better, not something that will, make you feel fucking terrible if you do badly. Like, for juries in college, they never gave us letter grades. They would just say, like, you obviously practiced, you obviously did a good job, you obviously did X, Y, and Z. Here's some notes to be better next time.
All music should be pass-fail. It's like, did you practice? Did you improve? Or did you not? Is it clear that you haven't looked at this piece until, like, 2 days ago?
Because there are people who, like, won't put in the work, and they shouldn't be rewarded. But it's also pretty obvious who didn't put in the work. Especially at, like, a high level, like college or something. But I don't know. It just seems, because, like, my this has always been my theory. I don't know if this is true or not, but no one is bad at music if they just practice. And the people who practice and practice well will inevitably have some level of skill that is passable. I'm not saying that everyone is going to be a virtuoso, but if you are serious about it and you take the time to actually work at it and you work at it in an efficient manner, not just like noodling around all day, you'll be fine. It's fine. If you want to do like exceptional, you'll have to like put in some extra work, but like if you just practice for a little while, you'll be fine. It's fine. It doesn't matter.
And maybe you don't have to be a virtuoso. Maybe that's not all there is to music.
No, exactly. It's like I was saying before about like, oh, you didn't get lessons when you were a child. Oh, how you're not taking this seriously. It's like, I don't want to be the next fucking Stravinsky here. I want to be Funk McLovin, who's popular online for having funny songs. That's it. That's kind of a low bar, but like, I don't go. It sounds nice.
Kids deserve, especially like younger kids, especially people who are just getting started with their instrument, deserve to not have that kind of academic rigor pushed on them. I knew so many people who quit their instruments after 6th grade because this band director was just so much. And like, if you were just, playing your instrument because you wanted to have a little fun playing an instrument, he would hate you. He had...
Yeah.
He played very clear favorites. I was one of his favorites. And the people who were his favorites got paid performance opportunities. And people who weren't his favorites got ignored or, like, told passive-aggressive comments about how they didn't practice enough. Or, like, it was visibly clear who his favorites were. Also, his favorites were always the girls, which in retrospect is incredibly creepy.
I wonder what that could mean about him. I wonder. Let's all take a moment of silence to guess here what he could have possibly been thinking.
But yeah, because I was one of, and like honestly, I didn't practice as much as I could have in 7th grade because I was 12. What 12-year-old is going to practice rigorously without like?
No, who cares?
Yeah. I was fucking 12. But I was one of his favorites. So over the summer, he gave me free band trips. I didn't have to pay to go on the yearly band trip because he would ask me to perform at the summer school graduation. And I would like play Pomp and Circumstance and one solo piece, and he paid for my band trips because of that. I had a friend who played some flute solo at some like school district event and got a free band trip out of it. He would give perks to his favorite students, and his least favorite students got completely ignored, and my sister briefly quit the flute because of this guy. She picked it up again in high school, but some people wouldn't have. Like, some people did, just like, after 6th grade, they were like, I can't stand this teacher anymore. I'm never going to touch this instrument ever again. And they missed out on the possibility that they would have loved the instrument.
Well, something that bugs me is that your story is like something that I've heard over and over and over again about like this band director or this person got on my ass for not like doing enough or like not being to the standard of them. And what kind of bugs me about this story is like some people are just good at their instrument to begin with. They're very talented in a raw way, especially when they're first starting out, when they're shitty little teenagers. And so I feel like a lot of these favorites get played with kids who aren't even practicing that much. It's just the kids who like on the first try have the right embouchure or something.
That's the thing. That was me. I did not practice as much as I should have, but because I had piano lessons when I was little, I already knew how to read treble clef really well and have a pretty decent ear for music. If you put any stock in IQ, I have a very high auditory processing IQ. IQ is bullshit, but still, I have high auditory processing. And not everybody automatically does.
The best guitarist I know quit the high school band that I was in because he just sucked at he played like flute or some bullshit and like switched to guitar because his dad played guitar, and this motherfucker was dog shit at any instrument he touched, and now he's one of the best guitarists I know just because he just was like, I asked him like, I hadn't seen him in I think it was like 2 or 3 years after I got out of college, and I was like, how did you become good at this instrument? And he basically just said, like, I did. And it's just like, you just become 1% better every time you sit down and practice for an hour. And if you do that enough, eventually you'll be good.
And of course, academia favors the people who don't need to slowly become 1% better. They're the people who start at 10%.
Oh, yeah. It's like Sasuke Uchiha versus Rock Lee a little bit.
I never watched Naruto.
Oh. Rock Lee worked... Never mind. This sucks. I'm saying horrible things. You put something in the script, though, that I think you put very well. Is music taught backwards to kids?
Yes. This is something I've been wondering. Because when you are a little... I'm going to base this off of my experience being a little kid first learning piano. When you're a little kid first learning piano, it's like, okay, we're going to teach you how to read the staff. You know, every good boy deserves fudge. Learning basic, like, okay, this is how you translate what's on the page to what's in your hands. But you don't know what that means. And it's taken me a while to make that connection to the point where what's on the page and what's in the hands translates to the theory. I'm a big fan of Roman numeral theory just because it's a way that I use to translate. Mm-hmm. But a lot of people really fucking hate Roman numeral analysis because they understand the theory deeper connected to the instrument. I tried learning jazz piano in college, and, you know, I can sort of play jazz piano, just not like super complex jazz piano. I tried learning jazz piano in college because I thought that would help me make the theory connection better. And it sort of did. But I wonder if I would have that theory to hands to page connection better if the theory came first.
I see what you're saying. I think you need, like, a tool to, like, be able to play music first. But then after that, I think that theory should be probably prioritized, because there was so much in high school band that you kind of just take it for granted, like, oh, this is all coming together for some reason, right? This sounds good for some, okay, why? And it's kind of something you don't question, but it's also something that, you know, kids should be taught, I think. Mm-hmm. It should be like, it wouldn't take much, like, our band director did this for the jazz students. I don't know if he never really did it for the concert band stuff. But he would say, like, do you know why this sounds good? And we would just sit there like, obviously not. You're going to tell us, Tommy boy. And he would sit there, and he had one of those whiteboards with a staff note on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And he'd just write, like, you know, this is this progression, this is this progression. Here, this sounds so complete because it's a dominant fifth. This sounds so jazzy because it's using, you know, a ninth chord, which has this note in it. And this person in the band is playing that note right now. And he would connect it to the pieces we were playing as opposed to just, like, theory worksheets that I would get at my old school. You say, is it taught backwards? Should theory be taught before reading the music? I think that you kind of have to teach it at the same time. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's like you teach a kid a piece, and then you ask him, hey, buddy, do you stupid motherfucker, you're too stupid to know this yet, but do you know why this works? I'm going to show you.
Yeah, I think that's what needs to happen. Now, honestly, makes sense that you learn that in jazz band specifically because it's so important to understand the theory if you're going to improv over it. And my sax teacher tried to teach it to me. I remember all the lessons about 2/5 progressions, and for some reason, it took a little while for me to click, for it to click why 2/5 is so important. It took a while for that to sink in, and I think I should have been taught that earlier. I had spent many, many years just like, okay, this is on the page, this is how it happens, and then when it comes to composition, I just sort of fucked around until I found something I liked the sound of, and I let that drive me. I think we should start teaching theory as soon as we start teaching notes.
Oh yeah, I think you're right. It's not hard either for a kid to learn. Because you don't really need to explain, like, you don't need much to, like, blow their stupid kid minds. You just need to say, this sounds good because this happens.
Especially because kids understand solfege. They know what do, re, mi means. So if you're like, the do is the most important note in this thing, and then this note leads to do, and this note leads to mi, and those are the notes that cause tension, I think like a 10-year-old could understand that, right?
Yeah.
I don't know much about 10-year-olds, but I mean, I feel like if it was explained to me when I was 10, I'd at least pick up on some of it.
I remember for jazz band, you reminded me of this. You awoke a memory in me. I use the minor blues scale for a lot of my stuff that I write just because it's easy and it sounds nice. And I remember in jazz band, I was on trumpet, and my high school band teacher was like, I was alone with him in a room. I was like, how do I solo better? And I remember he explained to me this like very just in-depth, way over my head. He was trying his best, but he was like getting too into it because he was really passionate about this stuff. And he was like, all right, you need to, utilize the leading tone from this one into this one so you can have a lick like this and X, Y, and Z. And I'm just staring at him like a dumb kid because I was like a freshman at the time. And I remember he like lowered his hands and you could tell I wasn't understanding. He was like, you know what? Just play the minor blues scale.
God.
Like, okay, you got it, boss.
My sax teacher was adamant that, like, if you only play the blues scale when you're solo, that's how you can tell someone's not a particularly advanced jazz musician. So he tried real hard for me to, like, really pay attention to the chords, and it just moved by too fast. Like, I understood it conceptually, but it just moved by too fast. I couldn't do it.
That's the kind of shit that pisses me off when people say that, because if you hear that, you're gonna think, oh, it is that scale is bad. And I know what he's trying to say. He's trying to say you should probably try to involve more complicated things into your composition, like like I was saying, leading tones or whatever. But like, I love the minor blues scale, and to hear that someone's like, oh, you can tell that someone isn't a very accomplished improviser if they only use that. It's like, shut the fuck up. Be quiet. Silence. If a kid wants to use the fucking blues scale, let him. By golly.
Also, it's hard to find an accomplished improviser who's 16 years old.
Yes! Exactly. You don't want to sound like an amateur, do you? It's like, yeah, I kind of do. I am an amateur. Fuck off. That sucks so bad. That's exactly what I was talking about, though. This whole, like, you can tell if someone's uncultured because they use this cool thing that everyone loves. That's literally all of Toby Fox's songs.
Oh, yeah.
Megalovania uses the minor, the minor blues scale. The Napstablook theme uses the minor blues scale. Muffet's theme uses the minor blues scale. That's why, oh my god. I'm sorry, I'm getting too hung up on that.
Composing post being in school is just like a whole world of like unlearning that things have to be more complex than they really need to be.
Exactly.
Sometimes simple music is like very enjoyable. Honestly, some of my favorite songs that I've written for like musicals have been like intentionally written as simple folk songs. Like the nicest,
yes.
the prettiest, most like heart-wrenching song in the entirety of my musical is a very simple lullaby written in C major.
I say, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. A lot of people ragged on me. They were like, oh, you use 5/1 in your stuff a lot, don't you? And I was like, yeah, because it sounds good. It's literally the main cadence. And I do use 5/1 in almost every one of my songs. It sounds the best to me.
I overuse flat 7/1 because I love Mixolydian so much.
Oh, yeah, that's good.
But, like, I start feeling guilty for using Mixolydian too much. It's like, should I branch out into more complicated things? Like, no, I'm sticking with that Mixolydian because it sounds good always.
Yeah, I think, like, I mean, you don't want to be stale, but there are other ways to have variety than just, like, raw music theory. In fact, I have a document on my computer in one of my composition folders. I don't know where the hell it is. It's just, like, chord progressions that always work. And they're all, I just go into that, and, like, I just literally have written down, like, 1 4 2 5 1, 2, 4, flat 4, kind of sad, something like that. Just like this list of chord progressions that I know work. You know, they're either stolen from another song that I like, or, you know, I just came up with them while I was noodling around. Or what I do is, while I'm at work, I'll write down a chord progression based on some kind of musical theory principle, and then come home and see how it sounds. And half the time that kind of works without, you know, composing without any oral feedback. That's kind of fun. They're all 4 chords, I think. Or no, there's one that's not a 4 chord, and it's the progression for not Autumn Leaves, but it's this one. That one.
Just like a descending 2/5 thingy.
Yeah, the 2/5 one, the circle of fifths one.
I mean, Autumn Leaves is a circle of fifths, but I don't think that's
it must have been Autumn Leaves. No, it's not Autumn Leaves. It's Fly Me to the Moon. That's the one. That's the bit.
Fly me to the moon, let me kick its fucking ass. Let me show you what I learned in my moon jujitsu class.
That's funny.
In other words, fuck the moon.
I have a song on my album that's based on one of my albums that's based on a Tumblr post. It's the Bog Frog song.
Oh, nice.
That's a good resource if you want to start like making memes or something. But yeah, I think in some this episode kind of got off the rails, but I think it was mostly like good stuff.
I mean, it's all about the same stuff, and it comes down to
Yeah.
you know, the rejection of elitism around music. And
Yes.
I mean, this episode's supposed to be specifically regarding music education for kids, and I mean, the moral of the story, elitism around music isn't good for kids just as it isn't good for adults.
It's actually worse because you are not in a position of power.
Oh, yeah. Well, here's one thing that I had on the list that we haven't quite gotten to yet. What did you wish you learned more of? If you could go back in time and teach your little baby self something related to music, what would it be?
Oh, definitely that what I was talking about with my band director, like explaining to us why something sounded good. Just like the raw tools to like make your own shit, basically. Because I think a lot of people treat every single child who's learning music as a performer, and that should not be how it is, because I didn't want to be a performer.
Fully. I think that's the key to why I was never quite as good as I felt like I was supposed to be when I was in middle and high school. Because, like, performing stresses me out. I mean, like I was saying about piano, like, do not put me on stage, and definitely do not put me anywhere near an accompanist chair. Like, that stresses me out so much. I don't want people to depend on me because I will mess up, because I am a human being who is not perfect, and if I'm not perfect at something, I panic. But it would have been cool if I had learned how to write with the piano when I was little. Because I always had a propensity for writing songs. When I was like fucking 4 years old, I would make up nonsense lyrics and a little tune to go along with them.
I think you're right, though. It's someone like you or me, we both went into composition, but honestly, I think even for performers, it's not good to just have them perform and be mindless about it. Because like I said, there is again, this is controversial. I don't know if this is real or not. There is no skill in just sitting down and practicing, in my opinion. Inevitably, given enough time, you will learn that lick. And inevitably, given enough time, you will, become proficient at something. If you're practicing efficiently, which is not that hard. But what is not inevitable is knowing how things work. My rule of thumb is anything you can do alone is not something that is an actual progression of your skill, basically. You must have someone else either giving you feedback or giving you active instruction to have something be a skill. Just sitting down and banging out a really hard lick, like something from Sing 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 or something very complicated, or nailing a solo, that's not really a skill, in my opinion. That's just something that you need to work at. That's something that you will, muscle memory needs to be built, but it's not a skill.
I mean, I'd call practicing a skill.
Practicing in and of itself, yes.
Because, like, if you know how to practice, you can get anything done. Not just knowing how to practice, but I think a passion for practicing, that's the skill. Because a lot of, like, people who are real performers really do find joy in the practice room. I never found joy. I never got to the point where I found joy in the practice room. I found inspiration for things I wasn't supposed to be doing in the practice room. I wrote the majority of my first musical while avoiding practicing piano. And that's the joy I got in the practice room,
That's
was
true.
the stuff I wasn't supposed to be practicing.
You know what I found in the practice room?
What?
A big dead rat.
Oh, no.
It was gross. It was like long dead behind a piano. It was like fused to the floor. It
Oh,
was disgusting.
God, that's awful. I thought you were going to say something like two students fucking.
Nope. Something worse.
That's so much worse.
Yeah, I think you're right, though. Is like, what I'm saying is this rote sort of memorization thing, or a very, like, look at it this way. If you, in a situation where there is no failure, in a practice situation, if there's no failure, if there's no state of being where it's like, okay, you fucked up forever and you cannot, it's irreparable, there's no stakes. Like, if you play Mario World 1-1 for long enough, you will pass it. The only way that you wouldn't is if you give up. And I think that that is fine, that sort of willpower. But what's more interesting is learning from others, or being given feedback from others, or something like that. These situations where you have one chance to prove yourself and show your skills. It's very spontaneous, not this rote sort of attacking a piece over and over. I think that kids need to learn, like, they need to learn something creative, not just how to sit there and, like, all right, son, you need to become a MIDI piano where you're going to play this lick back perfectly, so the band director, his ego will get stroked enough that, you know, he'll get an A at the state fair or something.
Yeah, teaching kids how to interpret should be
Yes.
the forefront. And also, if kids at a young age, alongside their first band instruments, were taught how music works and how they can create music themselves, it would undeify the composer. Because I know we talked about this last time, about how so many adult, professional, classical musicians, specifically classical musicians, see the composer as God.
Yeah.
And I'm not a fucking god.
This is getting into a good old, you know, cultural Marxism territory. This is getting into postmodernism territory here. So don't get triggered, anyone listening at home, to our very dry discussion of academic music and its problems. But I think that basically any time you have a position of power or a position of authority in any kind of band, it needs to be dialed back a little bit. And this goes for, like, you know, your high school band director. Why does he get to choose all the pieces? Why does he get to choose the curriculum? Shouldn't the students have say in what they're learning? To, you know, a conductor at a symphony level, like you said, this we can't consider people gods. Every person is a person, no exceptions. I think that a lot of the problems that we're talking about come from this place of power.
You are very right. I'm not going to say the only issue, because this isn't even really an issue I have with it, but my only concern with that is especially younger kids just starting to learn music, and honestly, even high schoolers too, might not know what they want.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying they should just pick their whole, like, you know, you should probably just teach a kid how to, like, play. But here's an example from my life. When I was in middle school, I wanted to be a composer, so I bought this really dog shit software called Noteworthy Composer 2. I got my dad to buy it for $60. I bought that instead of a video game. What happened was I made a little piece. It was totally bad, right? But it had every instrument that we had in my band when I was in middle school, and I took it to the band director, and I said, hey, I printed off every piece. I made sure everything was right in the right register, and I made this piece for you guys. And it was like, I don't know, probably 24 measures long. And I was like, can we play it maybe? I just want to hear what it sounds like. And for all my trouble, for my $60 and my, like, a couple of hours making this piece right in middle school. I got nothing. She was just like, I don't care about this. We're not going to do that.
That
just absolutely
sucks.
fucking nothing. And I remember that at the time I was like, oh, I'm entitled. I shouldn't have asked for this. Like, ooh, I asked too much.
Oh no, she should.
And at the time,
I did the same thing, but unlike you, I mean, this was high school, not middle school. But when I was in high school, I was, auditioning for colleges. I had a concert band piece that I wrote, and my band director let me basically take over the band for a day. It was after the end of semester concert had happened. There was a week or two of free time. She let me take over the band for the day and teach this one piece and get a recording of it. And your band director should have let you do that, as long as there was nothing like no time crunch, as long as there was no like, oh, the concert's in 2 weeks, we can't add an extra, we can't lose a day of rehearsal. She should have let you do that.
Yes, exactly. It's like, what I'm saying when I say, we have too much power and authority is not like, okay, we should give, band directors no power and authority, but it's probably a problem if a band director, instead of, because if I was a band director and I saw some kid bring me a piece, I'd be like, shit, kid, you're going places. You're taking the initiative. You're not just some schlub sitting around, forgetting to practice his clarinet. You actually give a shit. That's great. But kids get told no about this stuff. They're like, I don't want to, do this. I want to do this. And they're like, no, you got to do it this way. And it's very like, I don't know. I think you get what I'm saying. I think the audience probably does. I'm just not articulating myself very well.
No, you're making total sense. Like, it shouldn't be a no, you have to do this. It should be a yes and. It should be like a, okay, well, we have a concert to practice for, but once this concert's over, let's do your thing. Or like, if a group of kids comes to the band director and is like, it would be really fun to play, an arrangement of this film score that we all really love. The band director should be like, what if I programmed that for next semester? You're totally right. Band directors should listen to what their students want. Especially middle school ones. Middle school in general has a huge problem with basically the teachers feel like they can't let kids have any power or else they'll lose control of the... Middle school is prison for 11 to 13-year-olds. It is literal fucking prison for 11 to 13-year-olds. And I don't know how the kids today are fucking handling that because things just seem to have gotten worse.
Thanks, George Bush, for instituting a wonderful program called No Child Left Behind. Everyone look up on Wikipedia.
Actually, okay, speaking about the mid-2000s, I'm gonna spiral back to something we were talking about a little while ago regarding good band programs and how important they are to people like you who didn't have parents who could afford lessons. New York City does not have a band program in every school. I found this out like a month ago, or less than a month ago. I was here thinking, okay, I grew up upstate. I grew up, there was one high school. Well, there was the alternative school too, but like there was one main high school. There were two middle schools. It was not a tiny town. It wasn't like small town life, but it was like medium town life. The arts were pretty well funded in my high school because we were living in the shadow of a Ivy League and a school with a major music school attached. So, the town was full of parents that really cared about that. So I did have a pretty good band program, but like if you drove a few miles in another direction, you'd get to a much smaller town with a much smaller school, and they still had a band program. Everyone had a band program. So I was here thinking, oh, New York City, that's the big city. That's the fucking home of the arts, the artistic center of North America. And in the mid-2000s, they cut band programs for every high school that wasn't a specialized school.
Wow. That's fucked up.
I'm looking for a bit of a career change right now because working front of house at a couple theaters is not really paying the bills. I'm looking to try tutoring music theory and giving private composition lessons. I don't really know how to get a clientele yet, but in trying to get a clientele, I was like asking Jonaya if her kids had like friends in their school band or friends who were taking AP music theory, and Jonaya's kids don't know anyone taking AP music theory because their school doesn't offer it. I was talking to a guy at my one of my coworkers at one of my jobs who his second job is, I think he's a school counselor of some sort, and I was asking him the same question about, like, where I can find kids who need theory tutoring or need composition lessons, and he works for a school that specializes in theater, but they don't have a band.
What does that mean? Why don't they have a band?
They just don't.
We had, what did we have? We had like one pool of kids, but we had like a million different fucking bands. There were like jazz band, pep band, concert band, marching band, and pit band.
Huh.
And it was all like the same 100 kids, but we all did different shit. And then choir was like a whole separate...
Oh, yeah. Choir's a whole
They did their own
animal.
thing.
I mean, if you want to talk choir and, privilege there, like, so the band had weekly lessons. They're the weekly sectionals. Where you got to... Either you had more focused time to work on band music or to work on a solo for the NISMA festival or a sax quartet or flute ensemble or whatever instrument you are. So you'd get that extra practice and that extra time. Choir didn't have them weekly. And I loved my choir director, or the choir director who came in when I was in junior year. She was great. But, like, it's a huge ensemble. There were, like, well over 100 kids in the one ensemble. It was very difficult to schedule a more, not one-on-one, but more like centralized lesson for each student. So if you didn't pay for voice lessons, you didn't really learn solo vocal technique ever. I was a choir kid. I learned choral technique very, very well. I still struggle to not use choral technique when I sing on my own, but like I sometimes go back, listen to my old vocal recordings. You can tell I'm like pushing very pure vowels in places where that doesn't sound natural at all in solo singing. I didn't know how to do solo singing, and I didn't really know how to do solo singing until I took voice lessons through my grad school last year for half a semester. Like, if you want to learn solo voice, that's something that schools are never going to teach you.
I think for solo voice, most of the track for that nowadays is like, you live in LA and your parents are going to like pay for you to become a pop star or some bullshit like that.
The people who were focusing on solo voice were the theater kids, were the kids who were trying to get into school for musical theater.
That's true too.
Which I tried to do in high school and was always rejected because when I was a kid, my voice was definitely far, far, far below where it is today.
Like I said, a lot of good points.
Yeah. I mean, it all comes back to, there's an elitism to formal music training. There's an elitism to all the hierarchies in the music world.
Hierarchy bad.
And, I mean, fuck. Honestly, I've been thinking about this more because of, I'm trying to figure out how to get people to learn composition from me. I want to try and do private composition lessons, and
nice.
How can you approach this from the beginning? How do I wish someone had approached this with me?
Yeah. Well, and I hope that you find some impressionable youth to impressionate upon them your knowledge.
If any of you listeners are looking to learn composition and want to do composition Zoom lessons with Articulately Composed, DM me.
I told my mom, I think I'd be a pretty good teacher. And I told my mom, I do swear a lot, so that'd probably put a damper on it, but...
you can code switch.
Exactly. She goes, you don't want to be a teacher. Because she's been a teacher for years. She got really fucked over in 2009 during the Great Recession. Oof. She, was almost tenured and she got fired just for no reason.
Oh, God, that sucks.
Not even laid off. Just like, oh, well, we're it was like this really bullshit exemption from being laid off, where since they had to get rid of her whole department, they were able to fire her instead of lay her off because of the performance of the whole department. And she was doing like a lot of library stuff along with her composition classes. She taught writing. And when I got into, because the school I went to, Central Michigan, is like a very good teaching school. It provides a lot of teachers for like everywhere in my state. And I told her, hey, maybe I could be a band director like Mr. C. And she was like, don't do that. You don't want to do that. Don't fucking do that. She had to work at like a community college for the rest of her days because she got screwed over by her state college.
God, it's like the other way around with me because, like, you know, both my parents are professors, and, you know, I went off to get my MFA, and my mom was like, you know what, now that you have an MFA, that means you're qualified to teach college, and I've always been like, no, I don't want to teach. I've literally watched you guys teach my entire life, and I know that I wouldn't be good at it, and now I'm like, what if I tried teaching private lessons? And I know, my mom says that she wasn't like, oh, I told you so in private, but I bet you anything she was like, finally, she's coming to her senses, or whatever.
Oh, God. That's so fucking funny to me, because both my parents were, like, academics who got... It's because they were poor. They got fucked over because they were poor. And they, you know, they just got screwed. And they both have very bad experiences, such that they are both no longer teaching. My mom's retired. My dad's a carpenter. And they both have master's degrees. I think my dad was working on his doctorate when he, like... He was like a Shakespearean literature teacher, and he was like, nope, I'm not going to do this anymore because I don't care, and it's fucking me over, and it's ruining my life. I don't know. I feel like
how are your parents like the exact same fucking profession as my mom's a writing professor, my dad is an English professor. How did that end up? And then
I think it's literally just 2009 happened to them, and I really kind of resent a lot of specific things in my life because in 2009, like, the trajectory of my whole family's, you know, finances just totally changed, and a lot of opportunities were just locked away from them forever.
God.
And I think it mainly is like our lives are kind of dark mirrors to each other.
Yeah.
Where yours
but like
is
in
like,
the end, we kind of ended up in the same place.
Yes, well, that's
know?
exactly right. Because you had like you went on the right path, right? You finished the whole thing. You got your master's degree. I don't want to undercut it by, you know, we've been ragging on college, but it's not easy to graduate from college here. You got through, you know, 2 degrees, and you kind of were flourishing in that milieu. You're obviously very talented. You've done a lot of stuff that I really, you know, admire. But at the same time, I'm not a therapist. There's a lot of neurosis that comes with, like, having to do all that shit.
Oh, very much so.
And
very much
what
so.
kind of pisses me off, and I don't want to get pissed off on your behalf or anything, this is up to you, but what would piss me off if I was in your shoes would be like, this didn't take me anywhere. You know? I'm still some poor motherfucker in a shitty apartment having to split it with, you know, you were saying before we recorded, you were like, oh yeah, I probably have to move in with 2 other people.
It's going to be 3 other people.
That sucks.
I'm downgrading from having 2 roommates to having 3. I don't mind it. It's going to make rent a little cheaper.
I'm not saying you should be pissed off. I'm saying, like, if I was in your shoes, that would not make me happy. Because...
I mean, yeah, and, like, you know, I see you, and, you know, you're also, you know, working I mean, you probably make more money than I do. I'm working front of house gigs, and you're like a manager at a grocery store. Is that it?
Yeah, I work front desk. I have a day job.
You get more hours than I do, right? I don't even get a full, like, it's a good week if I get 25 hours. Like, I can't even, with 2 jobs, I can't even cobble together a full 40-hour full-time job. I've got this MFA. I've got 2, not quite minimum wage, but, like, close to minimum wage, front of house. It's basically just the theater equivalent of service jobs. And yeah, I do get paid to write music occasionally. But so do you. You also get paid by Jonaya to write music for Studio June.
Yeah.
You know, you've done other games. I've done other games. They don't pay very much.
I don't know if this is true. This is always what I've assumed. But I think I had more luck being a freelancer than you ever did with, like, your actual degree.
Well, no one really taught me how. Well, you like really ground at it. You were like taking
I'm
any
not doing
kind
that
of
anymore.
job, weren't you? You were taking, and like,
Yeah, it was like, I think we talked about this last time, but basically what it was is I just signed up for like 5 different sites and was like, I'm going to make it my full-time job to be a musician. And then I stopped because it was horrible. And now all I do is I work full-time at the farmer's market. You know, then I come home and do any jobs relating to the voiceover work that I do, which is I just read books for
oh, were
public
you doing
domain works.
ACX?
No, it's part of the Gutenberg project.
Do you get paid for that?
Oh yeah, it's not much, but I just think it's like, because I always kind of, before I was in the friend group that we're in now with Jonaya and Crow and everyone else, I was like, I felt, I was pissed. I was mad because I felt like I had a chip on my shoulder. Like, my parents were prevented from having a good life that they were on track for. They worked hard, they ground, they did the whole American dream shtick, and they got fucked over, which led to me being fucked over. I had to go to state college. I wasn't able to go, you know, to conservatory like I always wanted. So I felt like I got robbed of these, you know, highfalutin dreams of being this, you know, I wanted to be the next John Williams when I was really young, right? I wanted to be the next, like, guy, the next big guy in composition. And I always felt like I got robbed of that from not being able to go to the college I wanted, not being able to, you know, have private lessons when I was younger. And having this reinforced by all my professors where they were like, you know, you're a stupid kid, you're not taking this seriously enough just because you don't have the money. And then I met people like you and other, you're not the only, you know, music professional I ever met, but in my final years of college and when I was talking to you, I realized, like, oh, no one's doing good at this right now. No one's having a good time. And the whole fucking thing is broken. And that kind of makes me more pissed off.
Yeah.
Because it's like, all this time I've been thinking, if I had a shot, if I had my slice of the pie, I'd be on easy street, or I would at least be having more fun. And then having you say, like, no, actually it's like pretty terrible, like I'm still impoverished. It's like, what the fuck was I doing any of this for in the first place then? This is like, it's like realizing, you know, El Dorado isn't real or something after you've already gone to the jungle. It sucks.
I mean, as we've touched on, I think you're in a better place than I am because you learned from your own, like from the beginning, you learned from your own willpower, and you know way more instruments, you know, there's no elitism holding you back. And yes. I have especially recently, especially in the last year of being out of school, and basically there's no more elitism to physically be held back by. Elitism mentally holds me back.
Yes.
And I think you're in a better place from that. How do we change the system to make it so no one's held back by elitism and everybody gets every opportunity they possibly can?
I don't know.
Communism,
I
that's
think,
the issue. That's
right.
the...
There's a lot of, like, elitism, and I do feel like I am in a better position, but I think a lot of that has to do with, like, I just gave up on doing music professionally at all, which isn't, like, the greatest. Like, I wish I didn't have a day job. I wish I didn't have to, you know, do other shit to make a living. I wish I could just, you know, release stuff online. But I just feel like we need less bullshit. I don't know.
And I don't think you should give up on doing music professionally, because knowing that you're in the same place as people who have the degrees, who have the thing they're supposed to have and all that, knowing you're in the same place means that you have the same amount of shot as I do. Like, we're both working day jobs, and in our spare time, we can both write music that we then release on Bandcamp. Go download Gamer Girl Floodwater, everyone. It's available on Bandcamp today, also on Spotify and everything else.
Look in the description for all the links.
And plug one of your albums if you want.
Penis Music, the album, now available at funkmclovin. How does Bandcamp do their URLs? I forget. I think it's funkmclovin.bandcamp.com, or it might be bandcamp.com/funkmclovin. Keep trying until you find it. Your life will not be whole until you've listened to Penis Music, the album.
But, like, we're all in the same place where we're basically, no matter what, gonna have to do our music as our second job. Like, that was something that was drilled into us in my grad program, was like, this is gonna be your second job. You're not going to make money on this.
That's so bad, though. That's so bad. Ugh. That's so... You don't... Ugh. Anna, that's so bad, though. You shouldn't have to have your professor be like, hey, this degree that you've literally sunk your whole future into, this is going to be your second job. That's so bad. Ugh.
No, at this point, it's my fourth.
Ugh. That's really... No other industry would... This is my thing. No other industry has this problem, right? If you get a degree to be a doctor, they're not going to be like, ooh, you're going to have to, you're going to have to do some surgeries for exposure first, pal.
Oh, God.
No other... industry does this. This is fucking horrible.
So fucking broken. And it's because American culture doesn't value music. It doesn't value the arts. In Europe, they subsidize the arts.
As soon as you say this shit about, like, oh my goodness, I wish I could get a job being a musician, some fucking boomer is gonna come along and say, like, well, it's because you're a musician instead of something worthwhile, like a lawyer or a fucking insurance adjuster.
If we had a world of nothing but insurance adjusters, it would be so boring. There would be nothing to listen to. There would be nothing playing. Yes. There would be no films. There would be no games. There would be no books. Like, if there weren't creatives, there would be no media, and no one would have anything to distract them from their miserable insurance adjuster job when they get home.
That's pretty depressing.
Which is why subsidize creatives, please. Also, if you are a major movie studio, pay your fucking writers.
Here's what we need to do, Anna. Say what you want about monarchy, but those kings, they knew how to fucking patronize. You know what I'm saying? They knew how to throw a party. They knew how to, they knew how to build a sculpture. They knew how to, build a garden. We need to bring monarchy back, is I think the moral of this episode.
I need to find myself a rich Upper East Side lady who will just pay me to write fucking, like, ballads about her or whatever.
Yeah. Honestly, one of the best gigs I ever got, it was this woman who got introduced to me by a friend of mine named Davy, who named himself after Dave Strider. So, if Davy, if you're listening, you are seen. But it was this woman who he knew, and she was like, hey, I need some stuff for my D&D campaign. Just so you know, I'm, like, rich, so I'll pay you whatever the fuck you want. And I was like, just give me, like, $400 for this, piece of music. And she was like, sure, whatever. And we need more people. We need more, like, you know how it's like a joke in the furry community that you become rich on furry art because there's so many, like, rich guys who want. We need that for, like, a genre of music.
I know.
Like breakcore.
Like, I know there is furry music, but I'm not in the furry fandom. So there needs to be a rich fandom that I'm part of. Well, yeah, thank you so much for coming on my ArticulateCast once more. Is there anything new in your life that you would like to plug?
No.
No upcoming thing on your channel? No cool thing that you've done that you want more people to see?
My album's coming out in August.
Ooh.
August 31st. Cacophony. Also, SawCon is coming up, and I have a panel there, and we're going to do a cool little album with a Fidu spawn, if it was a real game. I don't know, all my stuff is like in it's being made, so I don't want to spoil it, so I don't have anything to plug. Just go to my Bandcamp, just find something you like. You'll find something good on there, I promise.
Thank you all so much for watching. Huge thanks to my patrons, Jonaya Riley, Tev Linsey, Stinky, and Rosalie Ross. If you want some music in your life that is instrumental and good to listen to while you do other things, go check out Gamer Girl Floodwater, link in the description. It is basically my tracks from Friend Sim 2, plus a couple others. If you buy the album, you also get 4 never-before-heard squid songs from a game that I was never paid for, so I still retain the rights to the music. Check out my social media in the description. And to anyone listening, if you did middle school, high school band, what was your experience? Did your band director make you hate music? Or did they push you to love it? Did they encourage you to love it? Were you traumatized by the way that band and competitive music and all that are structured for middle schoolers? Because I want to know if I'm the only one who was like fucked up by this kind of dude and I'm just like that sensitive, or if, it's a common theme. I think that's all. Thank you all so much for watching, and we will see you all next time.